Okay, this is part 2, and we're continuing with the analysis of this extremely important plan. The plan for, what's the official name of it?
Integrated space plan. So that is basically moving and getting the human transition from terrestrial to being the crystalline solar species that can move across various galaxies. That's kind of in a nutshell what all of this means.
Now, the important thing about this is, and I'm staying out of vision, but I've been running around like a blue-ass fly and all sorts of things happening. I got that from a very good friend in the United States who would, for instance, know the sound of faulty Mercury engines as a craft comes in to have a bit of a troubled landing. Mercury engines being counter-rotating red Mercury plasma field engines that the Germans had. I'm getting a nod on that?
Yes, you are.
So I've shown this diagram several times in bits. It's so complicated. And we're sort of going through this. And there's another couple of things just before we lose our little train of thought. This is 10 years since Max Spiers was taken out. Now, we know that Max died once and he died twice because he was poisoned and reactivated. Did you know that?
Yeah, I did.
You did know that. What else did you know about Max that I don't know already?
That it wasn't the first time he was reanimated either.
He was operating under a different name about 10 years before, 15 years before. Because one of the groups, that's to say Sohail, who is one of the group with James Casbolt and Duncan Davis, and then bolted onto the side of that was another guy called, I think, David, who was a United States asset. He was there when Kennedy, he was actually in the book depository standing over the two CIA agents who were crutched very close together with the two guns so close to each other. It looked like a double shot. But the recoil from the first shot slightly put the second shot slightly off. This guy, American guy, was standing here beside where I am. My hand is that you can't see. Here. Just
there.
at the
Okay,
bottom.
I can see it.
And he's a very civilized guy. Obviously, he's a bit older now. But the point is that Sohail, who worked with James, and James is only sort of back in circulation, and we're going to see him later. That's James Casbolt, otherwise known as Michael Prince. Part of the so-called sort of super soldier thing, with that program with all those children and things that Max and James and all that were involved with, including Sophia. And we're referring to basis 1 Sophia, who was born on the Southern African baby farms, and you know about that. Did we make a comment about that?
Yeah. Well, there were many Southern African, but particularly across South Africa, there was a lot of baby farms. There were some up in the Chimanimani Mountains, and there were others that have been recycling and recirculating specific DNA of specific native tribes. And I know this personally because of my time over 30 years in South Africa. And some of those native children's were taken and they were utilized and pushed towards the farms. And they had a specific look and feel about them, and they were from particular tribes, different types of tribes, but also they had golden eyes or they had green eyes, but the dark skin, and they had the negative blood types, and the list goes on. But yes, there
explain
were
the
many.
list and why, because there was a very important film, a little bit of interview with some, I have to say, I would say Jewish-looking gentlemen who were very, very, now they may not be, I could be completely wrong there, but they were very interested in a number of very good-looking African women who they wanted what they had. And so what are those attributes in those farms? And what do you mean by recycling?
Well, they were able to take the energies from individuals, so pituitary gland and others, but through a needle extraction. So that's what they were calling it. I don't know whether that's actually what they did, but they were calling it recycling the DNA. So in other words, taking whatever it was necessary that they felt was the key differentiator for that particular type of person or that particular race of beings. So that was part and parcel of why they were taking those. But they were negotiating, and I wasn't, I mean, I was already probably about 10 or maybe more, I'm not sure. And I remember being in a combi, which is a Volkswagen van with 2 sets of seats, and sitting with these other girls and young lads. And these were the children that were going to be taken to these farms to ensure that they were part of that breeding program. And they were all individuals of darker skins, and some of them were what they call light-skinned, but were of the native, particular types of native groups. And they were those that they pushed off. But all of them that I noticed were very sunny disposition, very happy children, and they all had very light eyes. They either had light green eyes, or they had like a golden brown, really a golden yellowy color. Some of them had like a ring around the eyes with different speckles in them, and they were very fine boned, but they were also some of them had different threads of hair color in their dark hair coloring. And they had fine features, they had high cheekbones. So they were different to other types of the darker children that they would take. But they wouldn't be taking them for the breeder farm, they would be taking them for, if you looked at the spreadsheet, there would be the breeder farm, and there would be, the snuff films, and there would be, there's always different values on different children's lives. And then you'd have the sexual farms and those that would be doing sexual activities that they could traffic across areas, across the borders, or take them to America, bring them back, take them to Europe, bring them back, all those sort of things that have, when you looked at the documents for the books, when you have the accounting books, you'd have the different sections. And the breeder farm was the one that had the most investment, but had the most return on investment.
Well, we allegedly had a number of facilities here. One of them in Wiltshire, West Wiltshire, near I think Gillingham. We won't mention the name, although James has already mentioned that before. Soul harvesting or soul swapping.
Yep, that's true. That can happen.
And that you had a drug rehabilitation centre would have drug addicts going in, and reptilian or perhaps other ETs processed into those bodies. And that's not too far away here in Wiltshire, on the other side of Warminster, south of Warminster. A lot of things going on in Warminster.
Gosh.
What do you know about Warminster and what was going on in the 60s?
I don't know much about Warminster. It's not an area that I was ever sent to or ever asked to go and have a look at or participate in whatever they were doing.
Well, finally, about Max, since we've come up with that, you said he'd been reanimated before he was reanimated.
A number of times.
And you said a number of times. So what's the detail in all that?
I think the only time that I can say and know that he had participated in some of the off-world activities, because the Max name tends to stick, and there's individuals of my age group. I was already quite young at that point, but the age difference between us is not that much. So I would have come across him, in my younger period.
I mean, you mentioned him with a sort of a fondness, but a sort of almost like a comical number of times he'd been in that process.
Yeah, well, I don't know how well you knew the Max individual, but he actually had a very funny side.
I knew him very well. He was a good friend, and I was the person who blew the whistle that they did kill him.
Yeah.
And they didn't successfully reanimate.
A number of times, not just once.
Yeah, but explain that. I mean, He must. So, explain that.
Well, he had a funny side, you know. The Max person. If you wanted to laugh, or if you wanted to be shocked, or if you wanted to, if you wanted something that was different, or if you wanted not a puppet or a comical person, then Max would be your person. You know, he wasn't the type of person that would take life too seriously, but he would be able to tell you straight away, this is how it was, that's how it is, go do one. That's how it is. That's it, straight down the line. But then he would also, he'd have a laugh and a joke, and sometimes you would never be sure whether he was actually serious or whether he wasn't. You'd have to kind of think, well, is he pulling my leg or is he not pulling my leg? So that's how I experienced the Max individual.
And what sort of years ago? I mean, he's been dead 10 years now,
Yeah,
or entering the middle of the 10th year.
Yeah, I think probably around about the 2004, 2005, those years, because my last episode of being off-world with my 2020 and return was in 2005. That was my last cycle.
And he operated under a different name then?
He had all sorts of different names.
Such as?
Michael was one of them. So this is Michael. I do remember the Max entity person, but Michael was one of the other ones.
And where was that? Mars, Antares, where else?
I had seen him at the same place that I was operating. So when I left here, I was operating only on the planetoid, which is where people would come to, not just people, but beings would come to, in order for me to be able to collect either evidence or intelligence or understanding about whatever it is their position was, and then collect material, shall we say, in order to be able to either blackmail them or utilize their DNA in other structures. And I definitely recall the Michael person.
So what do you mean
about
a planetoid? Are you talking about a Death Star or a big?
It's not a Death Star. It's a planetoid.
An asteroid.
It's a planetoid. It's like a small planet that does not have a fixed trajectory and is not fixed by gravitational pull and is not fixed to a star or a sun or a moon. It is something that if necessary, if they needed to pull it and transport it or take it somewhere, they could. But generally, wherever it was at the time, it was more or less in the same, only ever moved once, and it was pretty much in the same area. I can remember that Max Michael type of person, seeing him once or twice at that planetoid, which was
It's funny at this time with Atlas AI and the other 2 or 3 objects which are found that they've now talked about a rogue planet entering the solar system. I mean, what's your reading on all that stuff? Bearing in mind the secret space work, the fake alien invasion thing.
Well, I'm expecting that to come. They're going to have some sort of fake stupid ops, aren't they? They're going to have to find a way to scare the sheeple into submission. They're going to come up with something. They're going to have to. But, well, you've got 17 other comets, meteorites, meteors, etc. 17 others and various others that are following 3I Atlas in any case. So they're going to have to come up with something. And I wouldn't be surprised if there is another full planet that becomes very obvious quite soon.
So is that part of the group of objects which we cycle into once every 12,500 years? Is that?
Yeah, I think that's what it's going to be, in my view.
I mean, that's the Egyptian prediction. That's
Mayan predictions too.
Explain that.
I think if you look at some of the Mayan calendars that haven't made sense, those that are studying them now will realize that some of the areas that they have in their drawings, that is referring to these new planets coming online.
So we can expect a bunch of atlases coming in.
17 of them.
17 of them, not 18.
No, there's 17 so far, last count.
And where does that data come from?
That data for me comes from the being that I've been having downloads from for the last 61 years.
Right. So I think that's all the surprises covered almost.
It is pretty much.
Did you meet James Casbolt in any of these?
No, I didn't. I didn't meet him.
Or any of the others like Sarah Adams? I mean, this is the current. Have you heard of Burnworthy Manor as a training facility?
No, I haven't heard of that one.
Well, then let's get on with this diagram.